My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and
plus
beer.
years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. I just wanted to thank everybody. You know, I was working on stuff last night while on shift, and I was just kind of peeking at my analytics and stats, specifically for my website. And I was curious because we've seen so much growth over the past 6 months to a year in regards to everything that we're doing here at the Raspy Dispatcher. And I looked at the previous year, and the site itself had about 2,000 visitors for the previous year. And then looking at this year so far, we've had over 10,000 visits to the website alone. And it just shows how far our reach is getting as far as folks going to the website, looking for resources, seeing the podcast, seeing the merch, all the things that we got going on here at the Raspy Dispatcher is just continuing to grow. And that is very much because of you folks, everyone listening, everyone liking, everyone subscribing, everyone being willing to come onto these podcasts with me and share their story and be a bit vulnerable. It only helps the next person. It only helps the person who can relate to the experience, because everything that we go through, someone else is going through or will go through. Another amazing thing that happened when I reached out on my social media platforms, every once a month, I like to put it out there like, hey, I'm here, come talk to me, share your story. And the last time I put it out, you folks came in just waves. So many people booked appointments that we have episodes scheduled essentially through July of next year, which is just amazing. I'm so honored, grateful, appreciative that you folks are willing to come on here and be vulnerable, tell your stories, share it with the world, because it's not always easy, but it needs to be done. So again, thank you all so much for all the love and support as we get into today's episode. My guest today has worked in public safety as both a 911 dispatcher and a sworn reserve officer from 2008 to 2016, and has since moved into the private sector assisting the public with CAD, RMS systems, and 911 location technology. They are obsessed with providing better tools and information for dispatchers. And today we're going to talk all about that and more. My guest today, Julie.
Yeah.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate, like I just gave my little spiel, you being willing to jump on here with me. Like I said, I put a blurb out there to everybody, and everybody really responded and really answered. And you were one of those people, and I really do appreciate you being willing to come on here.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into public safety and your journey so far.
Gotcha. I don't think public safety was anything that I expected to get into. I remember I was going to college. I wanted to be a police officer. And my dad at some point was like, hey, did you hear that the 911 centering is hiring? And I didn't know there was a 911 center in that town. I had just moved there. And then he looked into it a little bit more and said, they don't really want college students because of the hours are too challenging and they're not very flexible. So I just kind of put that idea aside. And that was the first I'd ever heard about 911. I don't think I'd ever even spent time thinking about where 911 is located. Is it local? Is it in Atlanta, Georgia, for the whole country? Like, I'd never really spent time thinking about 911 or that aspect. It's one of those jobs you just don't think about. So long story short, I ended up applying there when I did see a job opening come up after I'd finished college. and had been working at the police department wearing a variety of different hats and different roles, and ended up getting a job there. And it was, the job that I never knew that I would love so much. And I've crafted, my whole career has been based on that step into 911, and just falling in love with the job, the mission, the purpose, and the people that I get to keep meeting in this role.
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. What was it like for you in the beginning? When you finally got in the door, what was that experience like for you? The training, the falling in love
Yeah,
aspect of it.
that's a good question. I think I gained a lot of confidence in that role because, I'd never been a super like outspoken or super outgoing. I don't know. I'm trying to find the right words, like confident person before 911 dispatch. The training process was really hard, and it didn't necessarily help that confidence in the beginning. But once I got through the training process and was, a relatively competent but new dispatcher, facing all those situations that I'd never faced before without somebody sitting right there plugged in next to me to help me figure out what to do, and having to rely on my own judgment and making good decisions, and quickly becoming a subject matter expert in, our CAD slowly over time. Things like that helped carry me through my career and help build my conference, after 911, learning to speak at conferences, things like that. And trust my own judgment really helped shape me as a person, and kind of help that take off.
And it's so true when you speak about the training process does not necessarily help our confidence. And I tell folks who are in it, like, you just got to hold on because, you just feel like everyone's against you. Your trainer hates you.
Do
All they
anything.
do is critique you. And it's just one of those things that it's not a process that's necessarily gentle or nurturing,
True.
especially in it. Like in the moment, if you're freezing or if you're struggling, like you gotta go. Someone has to step in. So it can be challenging for people. Yeah,
My trainer
like,
would literally
let's
go like,
do it.
"Oh,
Let's
okay,
move.
go." And I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying.
Yeah. So it can be challenging for folks. And if you're listening and you're like, yes, Julie, I get it. I've been there. We all have. Like that training process is, whew, you think the application process is rough. Once you get
Great.
in that door and
One
you're
sec.
like excited, and then it's like, oh.
I was just telling somebody the other day, we couldn't believe it when they told us that we needed to go take our lunch off the floor, and we would get an hour out of that 12-hour shift to eat our lunch off the floor. We didn't want to get off the floor. We didn't want to leave. We didn't want to miss a 911 call. We were so excited. Now, fast forward a couple of years and you're like, man, I wish I got an hour off the floor for
Right.
get anything like that. But that's how in love we were with what we were doing in training, and of course you stay just as passionate, although sometimes
Yeah.
I really wish you had that time to eat a meal off the floor. But
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And I think even when I lateraled, I was at the new agency and they mandated that too. It's like you need to take your break off the floor.
yeah,
And I'm like, I'm a toddler dispatcher. Don't tell me I need a break.
yeah,
You
yeah.
need a break. So we
I
need
need
to get
a
the
nap.
heck out of there.
I need a nap.
do, do you remember any of your first calls or early calls
Yeah,
for service?
I actually do. I think the very first 911 call that I ever answered, where I actually answered a live 911 line, I was in this county where there was this, really upper class kind of resort up in Upper County, but it was a very expensive place to stay. So very nice golf courses, wineries, horseback riding, that kind of stuff. And the woman was calling 911, not on purpose, but she was trying to dial out from her room and accidentally called 911. And she was requesting extra pillows for her room. And so I answered 911. This is what's the address of your emergency? And she's like, I'm in room 212 and I need extra pillows. And I'm like, ma'am, this is 911. And that didn't seem to phase her. And she's like, well, can I have extra pillows for my room? And I'm like, I think you need to call housekeeping. And she's like, well, can you call housekeeping for me and ask them to bring me extra pillows? I was so taken aback. I just looked at my trainer and I was like, and she's like, no.
Should I what?
I was just like, oh my God, this lady is not getting it. That's a funny memory. That was my very first 911 call that I took answering.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I
And it happens, I think, all the time. Like this perception that we have all the answers or that we can do that. I've asked people to like, can you send the plumber? I'm like, no, I can't send the plumber.
ask you
You-
for a number for another 911 agency, and I would literally tell them, like, as politely as possible, no shade, but yes, ma'am, I can look that up on Google for you. I mean,
Yes, I love that line.
I'm looking it up the same way that you probably would too if you'd thought of that, but I don't have a
Mhm.
secret connection to every other agency in the country, not really.
Yeah, and it's wild to me. I mean, and I guess, we're a little biased in a sense because we're in it. I can't really remember back to a time where I didn't have this knowledge, right? But I hope that pre-dispatch Ashley had an understanding that when I dial 911, I'm not gonna know the number for Florida.
Right.
I hope she knew
Good.
that.
Right, right.
50-50 chance though, really. We're probably giving her a
Pre-911
little
Ashley
little
would
credit.
pre-911 Ashley call 911 for extra pillows for her room?
Oh, no, no, definitely
Good.
not. Definitely not. I have a distinct memory of pranking my brother when
Uh-huh.
I was a kid, and I told him that his crush called him on the house phone, and he needed to call her back on 911. And so he called 911 asking for whatever her name was. And, it was a landline.
Mhm.
And so they kept calling back and we kept hanging up. And my dad worked for the city.
Oh, no.
Um, so they showed up and he knew them like through
Yeah.
work, seeing them like at the courtyards and stuff. And they're like, "Paul, is your house?" And he was like, "Yeah." They're like, "We got a 911 call." And so my dad was like, "What did you guys do?" And so
Right.
we told him, and I didn't get to see Pocahontas in theaters because I got in trouble for
That's
pranking my
awesome.
brother.
That was your first 911 call was sort of directed directed them to call 911.
Ex-
You, call 911.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So the question we should always be asking ourselves in every aspect of public safety, especially dispatch, is how can we do this better? So let's talk about streamlining our response through data first, data driven dispatch. And what does that look like? And what does that look like for you folks at Rapid SOS? Because that is where you are now.
Say, oh my goodness, that is the epitome of everything we do is data first dispatch. So what we've done at Rapid SOS, trying to combine like 15 million words into a nutshell, is get better location from devices, right? Replace some antiquated technology that we use every day in 911. For example, when I was a dispatcher in the center from about 2010 to 2016, we didn't have Rapid SOS, right? Rapid SOS didn't come out on the market until really closer to 2018, and it didn't look anywhere near what it does today until closer to 2020 with Jurisdiction View. So that being said, we didn't have those tools, right? So what we're doing at Rapid SOS is not only getting better location, but we're branching out into other areas too of emergency response and 911 call taking, trying to get additional supplemental data. And this is going to be quality data over quantity of data. We don't want to throw a bunch of information the dispatcher's way and make them sift and sort for the pieces that they need, right? We want to bring through those some really key pieces that are always going to matter: the caller's name, maybe even the caller's age, date of birth, things like that, if we can, from medical profiles, very pertinent health and medical information from profiles in case it is a medical call, crash telematics from vehicles, and other types of uh, vehicular things. More will be revealed soon to anyone that is using Rapid SOS. We're working with everything from the drone space and like a portable AED space, or drones that could even launch AEDs. I mean, we've been exploring things like that, partnering with people that do streaming video outbound and to from text to 911, right? Text both into 911 and from 911. Indoor mapping, school safety, weapons recognition, weapons detection,
Mm.
personal safety things like for remote lone workers that are out delivering stuff, whether it be Instacart or DoorDash or Chick-fil-A or UPS drivers or Amazon package, do they have a panic button where they can be connected to 911 very quickly and we can know their location without having to rely on a very antiquated phase 2 triangulate, phase 0, 1, 2 triangulation system to locate these people. And we're trying to get this data to the TC before the phone even rings so that they almost have a good idea of what they're calling about before they pick up the phone and try to all of a sudden control the conversation and get the pieces of information in order while dealing with human emotions and hysteria and all of that. Does that help? That's like a lot.
Oh my gosh, no, it's amazing. Yeah.
Exciting.
And it's funny because I feel like with technology in our comm centers, because I've been doing this for about 5 years, I feel like at least at my old agency, I've really grown in that technology. Rapid SOS got implemented at my agency right after I got off training, texted 911,
Yeah.
came into the light right after I got off training. Like I was learning as we were implementing those things, at least in our department.
Okay.
And it's such a useful tech. And the fact that you folks are expanding on it so much and thinking about the person that we might not always think about unless our package is late or the food
Right.
isn't delivered, um, and their need for being able to uh, get to us. And we have a lot of apps or systems or things integrated into Uber and stuff
Yeah.
like that to provide locations, but it's not always a good location. And I remember I had someone call in, I think it was like a vehicle accident, maybe like a OnStar type of activation. And they said they're on the freeway, but they kept giving me city street crosses. And I'm like, but you're telling me they're on the freeway. It is not helpful to give me the city street crosses if
You
they're on
need
the
yeah,
freeway.
right.
Yeah, we need to have a better way of pinpointing them. Like our tech needs to catch up.
Yeah.
So the fact that you folks are working on that is wonderful.
Absolutely, and we actually power the safety shield that's in the Uber app. So
Oh,
if you
there
are
you
on
go.
Uber trip, we power that. So Uber reached out to us. I think this was back again in probably early 2021, and it was kind of remember when Uber came out, and it was like the neatest, coolest thing because I don't have to worry. Like if we're going out to the bars, we can
Mhm,
nobody has to be DD, right?
mhm.
I don't have to drive. You don't have to drive. We can take an Uber home, and we can leave our car. We don't have to worry about getting our car home. Everybody's safe. But it's kind of funny because you think back when your mom told you not to get in the car with strangers when you were a kid. I think that's
It's
what
so
we do now, right? So Uber comes out and it's like it's the greatest thing. We can get a ride home for just $15 or whatever and skip all that,
Mhm,
all that other stuff that we'd have to worry about or be
mhm,
careful to plan around first. And then news of assault starts coming out. And again, I don't want to get too far into that, but it could happen in any type of vehicle program like, Uber, Lyft, any of those, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
it's either people hurting the drivers or even sometimes killing the drivers or vice versa,
Yeah.
right? And anyway, so they recognized the need for safety and they said, what can we do? And so we partnered with them to put that safety shield in that not only contacts 911 in an emergency, it's going to bring through the vehicle description. So a red
Mm,
2012 Hyundai Sonata, right? Red in color, California
mhm.
license 49 John, Adam King, Robert, whatever. We know exactly what kind of vehicle we're looking for. We know the license plate. We can run the registration and get some information on the registered owner. We could run the registration by VIN too, just make sure everything matches. And you have the added awareness, I believe, of whether it's the passenger or the driver calling, and that name comes through from their Uber account. And so that's going to give you some more situational awareness too as to what is potentially happening or whether the person that's contacting you is in control of the vehicle or not, right? They may not just
Mhm,
be able to pull over. It might be outside their control. That's why they're calling, or
mhm.
vice versa, right? They might be being
Yeah.
told to drive somewhere and they can't pull the car over. So it's just amazing what we can do to help law enforcement be on the lookout for that vehicle or EMS if it's a medical situation going on. We know exactly what kind of vehicle we're looking for. And with all of these remote workers since COVID, everything is deliverable to our door, but we have more strangers going to other strangers' houses than we ever have before, not knowing
Mhm.
anything about the person they're delivering to or the house that they're delivering to. And if they spot something out of order that's not safe for someone else or not safe for them, they know very little about the situation they're in. And we even have monitoring centers that can stay on the line with them, make sure they feel safe, escalate it to 911 if it goes south, or
Mhm.
let them go if everything ends up being okay without taking that time out of 911 to have to be on the phone with them. So
Yeah, what a benefit to have, a safety net, really, right? Is like to make that person feel safe and someone who's knowledgeable enough to know when 911 needs to step in or be involved because sometimes it is that we're calling 911 just because we're not feeling safe and we're not sure what to do
right,
and we just want to know someone's there listening, knows our location and to send help if something does
right,
go wrong. But that does, as you said, it ties us up
right.
because it's not necessarily an emergency at that point. So a service like that being provided to people just to make them feel safe and not inundate our 911 centers is phenomenal.
Right, it is. And think about, I mean, even as a woman, not to bring sex or gender into this supposedly, but how many times have you
Yeah.
texted your mom or texted a friend saying, I'm going to do this Facebook marketplace meetup, or I'm going to buy something off Craigslist. This is
Mhm.
the address I'm going. If you don't hear from me, even if you're joking, if you don't hear
Yeah.
from me in a half hour, like call 911, right? Or
Oh, yeah,
something.
we live in a different world
Yeah.
than our counterparts,
We've been doing that for
honestly.
years. We've been
Yeah.
doing that for years, letting somebody know
Mhm.
or staying on the phone with somebody when we're walking to our car in the parking garage, just
Mhm.
to be safe, so that if anything goes wrong, at least somebody knows where we are and they can call 911, right? And the
Mhm.
location may not come through, but they sort of have an idea. That's antiquated technology, but we did whatever it took to get there safely. And so now we have even more options where at 2 a.m, I don't have to call and wake somebody up, right?
Mhm.
There's somebody awake to hear that or to escalate my call to 911 if something happens. So kind of amazing.
Yeah.
As needs evolve and as technology evolves, our needs for safety continue to evolve as well. And as
Mhm.
we become a more operate around the clock kind of society, um, with the freedom to go anywhere, do anything, we need safer. Cannot find the word I'm looking for, but we need more safety to keep us safer while we're doing those things. So
Yeah, we need more accessibility to safety.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And, when you talk about, like, the information that your guys' system is translating and being able to provide, first names, last names, dates of birth when applicable, blah, 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 when able, um, it's I don't think people realize how beneficial a first name, last name, and date of birth is to a dispatcher or a police department. I can't speak to how often fire or EMS uses it, but I know for me that just having the spelling, like being able to get a good return on someone really can open up to who we're dealing with.
right.
It can let us know if they have a gun registered to them. It can let us know if they have a history of violent crime. It can let us know if they have a warrant, like all these officer safety, all these, community safety things, if something's escalating in a situation and we know one of them has a history of doing XYZ, it's going to affect the situation and how our officers respond. And if we don't have someone on scene who knows this person, who's able to tell us this is John Smith, date of birth, whatever, or the suspect or the person, the aggressor, is not willing to give their name. If these things, if we're able to get access to these things, it really helps our officers respond. Our units have a better understanding of who they're dealing with, what they're going into,
For
what
sure.
their history is like.
I talk about the profiles all the time sometimes, and I always use a domestic situation when I'm talking to a new
Mhm.
agency about Rapid SOS Portal. Even just having a little data card that comes in that says the caller's name. Imagine, you're in the situation where either your caller's completely frantic and hysterical, and you didn't get a chance to ask her name. You were asking the address, you're asking the phone number, and all of a sudden she's screaming, "Oh my God," at the top of her lungs. Jane, 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 can you hear me? Jane, I need you to speak with me. You're using their name. Um, that information coming through too. Like, for example, if I call or text 911, not only does my Apple enhanced emergency data card come through to Rapid SOS Portal, but so does my emergency health profile, which is a free profile that, regardless of operating type of your phone, you can sign up for. And that information will always go through to 911 if you call or text 911 in any city in the US, as long as that 911 agency is using Rapid SOS Portal. What's interesting is that information could get outdated, right, if it's not updated. And that's true of mine because my emergency health profile was created April of 2022. It
Yeah.
says Julie Berthelot, which is my maiden name. And it says, like, my fiance is Nick Keleher. Well, today in 2023, I'm Julie Keleher and my husband is Nick Keleher. We
Yeah.
got married since, but you can see that profile hasn't been updated since April. But think about how many women are going by their maiden name on Facebook still, and they maybe never updated it. Or if you're trying to see if somebody's checked into a hospital or a hotel under an alias, you could check that maiden name. It's just incredible. The having a little bit of information is always better than having nothing at all. And then dispatchers are totally like private investigator detective. I mean, we can find anybody on Facebook. If they exist on social media, we can find them. It does not
Mhm.
take long. We know how to look at their friends and their friends list that are showing and find friends of friends of friends.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah, we will find you.
well,
Cue whatever,
those
law
excellent,
drama.
excellent stalkers. Yeah. People are like, "Oh, wow, you found me." I'm like, "Yeah, well, it's like dispatcher, always a
Just
dispatcher."
doing my job, Just showing my skills.
Right? Love it.
Oh my gosh. What is your maybe favorite tool, favorite aspect
Mm.
of your guys' platform? I know there's so many things that
Yeah.
are amazing that you guys are doing, but do you have a favorite aspect
Yeah,
of
that's
what
a
you
great
guys
question.
got going on?
One thing that I think I really love is that we show all attempts to contact 911. So whether it's obviously 911 calls or what you're going to see the most often, wireless 911 calls, and even our premium offering does have the ability to show landline and VoIP and use Esri-based mapping and stuff like that.
Mm,
But anyway, all that aside, text to 911, before text to 911 were even a thing, or I don't I suppose they were probably a thing, but for a very
mhm,
small percentage of 911 agencies, there's still many 911 agencies today who do not have text to 911 in place, right? And maybe a lot of people listening to this, if they're not dispatchers, are like, "Oh wow, really?" Or or if you're a dispatcher and you're like, "Yeah, my agency doesn't have that yet," right? It either makes
mhm.
sense or it doesn't make sense depending on which side of the fence you've been on.
Yeah.
We have always showed attempts to text 911 on our portal screen too, and this is all part of the free, absolutely free product at no cost. That text attempt shows up and it doesn't look like a 911 call. It's not the teardrop shape with uncertainty radius. It's a little like cartoon speaking box, right, with some lines on it. You don't see what the caller said. You can't text them back, but you can see that they tried to initiate a text to 911. And
Mm,
that we have that available to areas that don't even have text to 911 in place is just incredible to me. I was over
wow.
in Carroll County, a neighboring county, the other day, and I asked them if I could text 911, and they said, "We don't have text to 911." I said, "I know. May I send a text though?" And they were like, "Yes." So I wanted to show them how I would get a bounce back saying text to 911 is not available.
Mhm,
Please make a voice call, text, but it would show in Portal because they were brand new on Portal. But what I
mm,
forgot was they're in the basement, they're super walled in, and there's no cell connectivity. So I was connected to their Wi-Fi so that I could send an email about something else. And I sent a text to 911 and it immediately bounced with that undeliverable thing. The text never
mhm.
went through to 911. That being said, even if it had gone through to 911, there's no text to 911 in place. But because of my connection to their Wi-Fi, the hangup showed up in Rapid SOS portal. The text ping showed up in
Wow.
a very, very accurate location within the building, even with this poor cell GPS connection inside that building. And my Apple card, my Apple emergency profile showed up. My EHP profile showed up. They knew my blood type, my height, weight, my first name, my last name, my husband's name and number, my stepson's name and number, two of my other emergency contacts' name and number, all off a text that never got delivered to 911. Like that just
Wow.
that blows my mind to me.
Yeah,
Um,
that's incredible.
yeah. I think another thing that that's newer though, a newer feature that I'm most passionate about is all the school safety partnerships we're doing. And I don't have to tell you, Ashley, that school safety right now, I mean, it seems like almost every other weekend there's a shooting somewhere, and it may not be in a school,
Mhm.
right? But these shootings are becoming more prominent. So we partner with probably about 13, 14, 15 different school safety partner companies that provide school safety through different products, and they're all different, right? Now, the school would be the customer. You and 911 would see any activations or alerts in the
Mhm.
event of emergency at no cost, right? It never will cost you money. Somebody somewhere might have to purchase the system,
Mhm.
but the system can recognize weapons from existing cameras that are already in place, take
Wow.
a picture of the would-be or to-be shooter with what is suspected as a weapon. It's first human verified before it's sent to 911, but once it's
Mhm.
human verified by a team of highly trained weapons experts that can say, yes, that is definitely a shotgun or a rifle or a pistol or whatever, they call 911 directly. They call through to the 911 lines. They can use VoIP to call directly in on 911 for
Mhm.
that agency, and they push the alert in portal with the picture. Dispatch can copy the picture, put it in the MDC. They already have a suspect description. They already have a, physical, right?
Mhm.
He's white, black, Hispanic, tall, whatever. Looks like he's
Mhm.
tall, slender,
Mhm.
navy blue shirt, white pants, something like that, holding what appears to be either a long rifle or, you could say a pistol or a sword or whatever it is. So that kind of stuff, head count management. There's a lot of panic button alerting things that we're trying to equip teachers with in schools
Mhm.
to be more
Mhm.
safe. A lot of schools don't have those solutions yet, but if they would look at options that if they're already using Rapid SOS portal that would come into
Mhm.
the portal so they don't have to log into 40th, 50th, 60 programs every time they do
Yeah,
their shift,
true.
that
Yeah.
would be awesome, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, 2 things, great technology. The first one with the text 911, I guess I never considered an abandoned
Mhm.
text to come across on a platform, right? Like, we know about, like, 911 hangups or abandoned 911 calls, but the idea of it being available in the text aspect of things, and that you guys are able to translate all that information, um, even when you don't have access to text to 911, is amazing, because you have to be very intentional to try to text
Yes.
911.
No
You know what I mean? It's,
accidentals.
yeah. So when people are like, send me their Spotify playlist and their mixtape on text to 911, which I swear it's happened, they're like, oops, accident. I'm like, liar. Like,
Right.
you have to be very intentional to text
Right.
911. So if the agency, for the example that you gave, is seeing that on their map, it, depending on what their rules and regulations and their operating looks like, but it's probably worth sending someone to just check the area and see if they're flagged down, because of how intentional you have to be to try to text
Right.
911.
You're either having an emergency or you're just checking to see if it works, but you cannot, like we say, butt dial, right? Or pocket dial for accidental
Yeah.
calls that happen as a result of buttons on our phone being pressed or mishmash,
Mhm.
screen being pressed. You can't
Yeah.
butt text 911. So
Yeah,
terrible.
it would be a
You can't
feat if you
accidentally
did,
text,
I mean.
yeah, 911. So it's not quite as easy.
Um, yeah, and then when it comes to, like, school safety, and it it is probably one of those things that I think dispatchers, when they think of calls they don't wanna take, or they dread that, and just the high probability,
Mhm.
um, it is school shootings. I mean, no one wants to have to take that kinda call, but more and more and more, we're seeing every type of comm center, from small, medium to large, having to deal with those type of situations.
Right.
And the fact that we have technology that's giving us a weapon, for officer safety, like what kind of weapon they're using, what kind of firepower, how long, how many bullets do they have to, continue this thing for X amount of time. And when you talk about facial recognition and description, we're working with the schools at that point, and the teachers are going to be able to identify this kid with that information, and just being able to get the most information as quickly as possible leads to um, bringing that event to a close quicker, saving more lives.
And while those events are absolutely horrible, we do
Mhm.
learn more about them the more that we take them, if that makes sense. And I don't even mean just from a dispatch perspective. There's a session that I've been doing this summer at state conferences, and it talks about lessons learned in response to active shooter events, what we have learned from studying the data. And we at Rapid SOS have spent a lot of money and time studying data from either man-made events like that, man-made incidents, terrible ones, that are caused by somebody, or even weather events, right? Like hurricanes, Hurricane Ian
Mm.
and whatnot, and studying the way the patterns in which 911 calls come in, how that affects staffing, exploring incident area versus caller area, and what we've done wrong sometimes in responding to the caller location and
Mhm.
driving right past the shooter, or how the shooters have set themselves up after shooting inside a school to now pick off law enforcement officers. We learned, I mean, if you think back to like Columbine, we learned not to send in fire and EMS until law enforcement has secured the scene, because
Mhm.
we had to learn with some fallen fire and EMS officers that these shooters weren't going to stop when they saw somebody, with a badge or a do-gooder arriving on scene to save
Yeah.
people. So we've learned lessons and we slowly keep learning. But as technology changes, their tactics and stuff change too, and we have to keep learning from a law enforcement angle too on the best way to respond to these, the best way to save the most lives and stop the threat. And so we're always studying data about that kind of thing and doing whatever we can too to promote officer safety, first responder safety, and that's down to even fire and EMS with our I am responding integration, so that we can see where first responders are when they say they're en route to the scene. If they never show up, where did they go wrong, or where did they stop along the way? Can we go check on them? Or, like our platform with Axon body worn cameras, when an officer's on a contact and that body worn camera is recording, we're updating their location real time to make sure that if something goes squirrely, we know where they are outside of the vehicle, because we're used to AVL, but we're not used to their physical location. So,
Yeah, no, it's true. And especially, we were just talking about this last night.
Mhm.
We were eavesdropping on a sister channel's little foot pursuit they had, and if you've ever worked a channel where someone goes foot pursuit and your officer is now in a light jog, that radio traffic is not as clear. A lot of
Yeah.
things are happening, right? They are now exercising. They are trying to figure out where they are. It's probably happening in the middle of the night.
Right.
So they're looking for street signs, they're looking for landmarks.
They're over
They're trying to,
backyard fences. They're like,
yeah, they're jumping fences, they're trying to figure out north, south, east, west, and
yeah,
all of that is having to come over the radio, and
right.
it's usually sounding like, "Got one, running, north, south," like, and so it's not always clear, and it's no one's fault other than they're trying to,
Right.
win the race,
You're in the
and we're
bus. Check
trying
one, they're running.
and we're trying to really have a good location. But you're right, like, once they get out that car, it's really on the officer to be as clear, as aware of their surroundings, to get other officers to them for us to know where they are, to send them help. And if we have another tool to make that easier, if they're like, I see, I don't know, a jack in the box, and you can look at where they're mapping with their, body worn, as you said, and I can go, okay, it looks like blah blah blah. Can you confirm? They're like, yeah, it's those streets. It's just so helpful,
Right.
especially for our units when they're in high stress situations, because what we sometimes can fail to remember is that we're humans, right? Doing this job, our officers, us dispatchers, we have the same human responses to high stress situation as anyone else. We're held to a higher standard, of course, but we're still human. We're still going to react.
Right.
And if we have technology that aids us a little bit, that recognizes we're human and can help us,
Yes.
it's only increasing our safety.
Take all the help we can get, right?
Yes, we will take it all.
There's so much to remember. There's so many things to pay attention to. It's so
Mhm.
easy to miss when you're listening to 5 different channels, and you're listening to your partner tell you something, and fire's asking questions and law's asking questions, and you've got multiple callers on the line and you're juggling them. To try to understand, some broken, heavy breathing traffic as they're running, but we have to look out for them as much as we can. And sometimes, they don't know where they're at in the dark, jumping over fences, diagonally across blocks. And so as officers are responding, we don't want those responders to hit them or run over either the officer or the suspect in the chase. And so we're trying to guide other emergency response vehicles around, but keep them abreast of the area as it's unfolding. And it's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole 911, the whole job of a 911 dispatcher is a lot. And sometimes it's just like extra a lot.
It's so true. And another thing that I enjoy hearing about, especially when we talk about, school safety and responding to major incidents and things of that nature, is the idea that we're considering what dispatch is dealing with. Because often when I think agencies, or when let's say when agencies are preparing or training for these things, I think they can oftentimes forget to include dispatch or look from dispatch's point of view. Like, it's great that this is your guys' meetup spot and this is the way you're going in, but what do you want dispatch to be telling all the 400,000 people calling in about this incident? How do you want us to be directing them? What are we doing with this information that we're receiving? And your technology is providing dispatch more information where they're not having to go, like you said, weed through it, have to go through the weeds often. So any technology that's going to directly help the dispatch center, especially in a huge incident, like, I'm all for that. We need more of that.
We do. We try to solve other problems as we can. And I don't know if you've ever seen supplemental alerts come through, but that's where, the alarm monitoring company calls you and they tell you about it. Audible or silent, panic, commercial, residential, burglary alarm, fire alarm, EMS, any of those situations, right? But you see that matching info in the Rapid SOS portal. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about seeing the spelling of the last name. If you see the address in front of you and they're saying 1412 North Beach Street, and you're seeing it, and you don't have to say, is that B Boy, B Victor, no, and that's a real street and a real address. You've got so much information in front of you, it's going to really reduce that transcription time of typing everything they're saying. You're really verifying that what you're hearing is matching up with what you're seeing, both map wise and data wise on the screen. So when you're asking emergency contacts, phone numbers, they don't have to repeat the phone numbers. As long as the phone number they say matches the one you see on the screen, there shouldn't be a need to verify it. And a lot of agencies are even using portal as a second form of address verification, because the way we get our location is different than the call routing, right? So phase 2 is actually matching, or what the caller is saying where they're at is matching Rapid SOS. Unless you really need that recorded twice for confirmation, you
Yeah.
will have to verify if you don't want to. So we have a lot of agencies that use Portal for second verification of addresses and don't waste, I don't want to say waste the time, but they don't expend the time to repeat the address for the recording. And that saves seconds. And we know that seconds can save lives sometimes. So
Totally. Well, as we improve the way we do this job, we also need to focus on improving our own wellness and our own coping skills. What are some things in your journey that you have found to be helpful on those topics?
that was a fantastic question. I was just having a conversation the other day, I think at the Indiana Amp-Gonina conference with a couple gals that when I was working for Motorola, taught them CAD, and now I still see them in day-to-day Rapid SOS stuff, and we still have a relationship. We were talking about mental health and wellness, and we're talking about bad coping skills and good coping skills. And I think like when I was in the seat, everybody told me, well, you got to have thick skin to work in 911, like don't let anything bother you. So we were kind of afraid to like let people know when something bothered us because we didn't want to appear weak. But I absolutely took calls home with me that I cried about all the way home. I cried about probably for an hour or two after I got home. I mean, some really traumatic ones, the ones that I still, everybody's got those calls seared into the back of their mind and the back of their memory of hearing those voices and hearing those cries for help. And I never really did anything with them. And it wasn't until I was sitting, this was last year in Wisconsin, I was listening to Hank Hunt. And if you've ever heard of the Carrie Hunt Foundation, it has to do with dialing 9 to be able to, or not dialing 9 to get out of the hotel, dialing 911 directly from a hotel or a multi-line telephone line place and being able to reach 911 because his daughter was killed by her husband, estranged husband, and her child tried to dial 911 and they couldn't because they didn't realize they had to dial 9 to get out. And then 911. So anyway, they have gone all the way up to the president and drafted legislature in place that will, remove that, make all phones capable of calling 911 directly without having to dial a 9 to get out. Anyway, also do this neat thing with blankets where they ship blankets to police departments to give to victims to comfort children and women, or people that need comforting in a domestic violence type situation or any kind of scary call. I was watching the footage, though. He was displaying some footage of the chase and he was playing the 911 call and the radio traffic from the officers that were responding to try to get the suspect after they discovered Carrie had been murdered. And listening to the traffic, I mean, my heart was in my mouth. Like I'm just listening to another dispatcher. And this was 10, 15 years ago. I'm not 100% sure, a while ago, and just choked up. And it just made me realize how much trauma was unseated. I felt like I was in that call. I felt like I was either the officer, on the dash cam as I was seeing them responding in that pursuit, or the dispatcher or something. And it was so familiar. And yet I'd never heard this call before. And it just reminded me that there's probably a lot of unseated calls that I've taken home trauma and not even realized it. And there's just rocks in my backpack. So you're asking about the solution. I'm living in the problem, but you're asking about the solution. What is the healthiest way to deal with that? And for me, it's been a lot of counseling. It's been a lot of self-growth. I'll tell you what I've tried to avoid, though, is unhealthy coping mechanisms. I've tried, I've leaned away from reaching for any kind of, solution that would, just kind of numb the pain in my mind or whatever. I've gone very deep into feeling my feelings and working through them with a very clear and conscious mind. And that has given me more progress towards healing and peace and recovery than anything else in my life. And so not being afraid to get down deep and look at root feelings and causes and relations, maybe other fears that these calls brought up in me, something that I identified with uniquely in my soul, as far as something that I'm terrified of. And I took that call and maybe that person didn't make it in some of those calls. And that's still a fear and a sadness that I carry around. But it's never too late to go back and try to work through those and try to heal and move forward from them. You did the best you could with what you had at the time. And that's really all that you can take from that. And then you can honor their memory. And maybe you were the last person that spoke with that person, but you can honor their memory and you can do everything you can do to keep it from happening again in your own life with the knowledge you have now,
Yeah. I mean, when you said I was living in this call and I've never heard this call before, I mean, that's a real statement. And it only speaks to how we're all kind of related through this trauma bond that, dispatchers get. Like we get it. Like I can listen to another dispatcher's call and remember a call that's similar, that I've taken, that my partner's taken, that my department has dealt with. Um, it's just something that dispatchers have been dealing with for since we were implemented as dispatchers, and now it's coming more to the forefront that we do carry this trauma the same as any other first responder, and that we should seek services to. We should all have a counselor. You know, we should all have a
There's nothing
therapist.
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with getting some help.
There's nothing wrong with it. And it doesn't have to be, you know, that you took a school shooting. It could just be like, I take these little calls every single day, you know, and those add up. It doesn't have to always be a big boulder that causes the
Stones.
yeah, the stones.
The
They
rock
really start
shoe.
adding up.
The rock
Yeah.
in the shoe starts irritating. It creates that
The rock in the shoe. Yes, totally. It's just it's so true. And it's definitely those things that I think we're, like you said, we're kind of prone to, yeah, I'm good, you know, like, and then all of a sudden you're in this moment and you're like, man, that's weighing on me all of a sudden. Like, I thought I was okay, you know. So if you're listening and you're like, I don't know if I need to or want to, or just give it a shot, you know, like, some folks I know try counseling and they're like, oh, I didn't like it. But counseling it's a lot like dating, you know. You gotta swipe right on a few therapists, you know, until you find one that, you know, is a good fit for you.
Yeah. Or even a style of counseling that fits for you. I mean,
Yeah.
Tracy Eldridge talks about EMDR and how that's safe
Yeah.
for life. That's something that I'm starting pretty soon, actually.
Mhm.
But different styles, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, there's all different kinds of counseling styles that work for you. Maybe you just need someone to listen so that you're not venting to your spouse about everything that frustrates you, and you're taking like that burden off of them and giving it to someone else. Maybe you actually need, like, you know, coaching, talking through hard things that you've been through in your life, personal or professional. There's so many different kinds of counseling. And yeah, you might have to kiss a couple frogs before you find the prince or princess that is the therapist that really works for you and is a good fit. I've seen a lot of therapists that were not good fits, and it took me getting one that is a good fit to be like, oh my God, I never want to lose this one, because he challenges me to think so critically. And he challenges me. I don't want someone that agrees with me, that says, oh, that must be very frustrating. You sound very sad about that. Well, yes, absolutely. Like, that's always you $200 an hour to tell me that. To help me like challenge my thinking around this event and challenge like my beliefs of self and how I see myself in relation to this event, whether it be personal or how I did with this call, or what happened in the long run with this call. I mean, there's so many different reasons to see a therapist. But yeah, just be honest, and it's amazing how much you can really grow around that incident and challenge your own fears and perceptions, if you just look at it really analytically. And
yeah, and it's okay to break up with your therapist. They get it. They don't be like, don't feel weird. They know they're not always going to be the best fit for every single person who comes into their doors. So don't stick with them just because you're afraid to break their heart. They'll be okay. I promise.
I had to do that earlier this year. That was fun, but we just didn't have a similar style. She was a sweet lady, but she just wanted to tell me that she really understood. Wow, that must be really hard. And I'm like, that's not what I need. I need somebody that can help me with solutions, right? I don't want to just live in the problem and don't agree with me. Like, let's fix this, right? So.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So as we bring this to a close, it's been amazing.
Yes.
So much information, so much tech. I love technology. What advice would you give someone who is considering a career in dispatch or in public safety?
Get out. No, I'm kidding.
Run.
When you still can. Well, one thing would be this, this could turn into a career for you, right? And if you are good at this, there are elements that are required of a good dispatcher that not everybody has, truly. And I'm not trying to be exclusive or be mean in saying that. If you don't have a sense of exigency or urgency, we can't build that into you, right? If you're not like, oh boy, this is going to be life or death and I need to make the right decision or something bad's going to, we can't build that into you, right? There's a lot of things you can learn. Urgency is probably not one of them, right? And then multitasking, right? If you can't multitask, might not be a good fit for you, right? But if you have the background to pass the background check, and you can talk really fast and yet still be understood, and you can juggle multiple systems and conversations and still, for the most part, keep on beat, then this might be for you. You might spend your whole life doing this. I know so many people that go into 911 and they are career lifers in 911, and they end up managing a comm center or going, what did you call it? When you lateral over to other agencies, you know, and going up to bigger agencies. Or this might just be for you a passion and several, you know, years spent in this field that is a stepping stone to something else too. And there's no wrong answer. There's no wrong destination, right? All of our lives are a surprise. We don't even know what's going to happen next. I never thought that getting into 911 would take me to working for a Fortune 500 company like Motorola Solutions. I wasn't even hired with Motorola. I was hired with Spillman, and then Motorola bought them. I never thought that I'd be on a plane flying all over the country, only home 2 days a week on the weekends to do my laundry and get right back on a plane. But I had some amazing things happen, you know, and I got to see some really cool things. I got to meet awesome people. And now I get to work more from home from Rapid SOS, but I get to work on the cutting edge of technology. And I mean, it's, my advice is just go for it. You know, give it everything that you've got. Do your absolute best. Try to deal with hard things as well as you can, and take care of yourself. Like, don't be one of those people that you don't take care of yourself because you have to be the strong one holding it all together for everyone in your life and these people at work, and you just neglect yourself. You will crash. I have crashed. I have risen, but it took a lot of therapy and other things in between to, oh man, getting older is awesome. Like, I swear, I just turned 38 2 days ago, and I'm like, it is so amazing. I wouldn't trade this to be back in my early 20s for anything. But yeah, just take care of yourself. Be good to yourself. You are human. You will make mistakes, and do the best you can, because you are a hero and a savior in so many instances to these people that are calling for help in their darkest moments. It is a phenomenal calling to be a 911 dispatcher. And I'm so proud of the years that I spent in 911 dispatch. And I hope that I'm always close to this type of work because I'm so passionate about it.
Awesome. Julie, thank you so much. What is a way that folks who are hearing about your tech, they're like, wow, that sounds cool, I want to bring it into my center. How can they reach out to Rapid SOS and see about implementing the software in their system, in their centers?
Great question. Yeah, my email is jkeleher, and I'll spell that for you in a second, jkeleher@rapidsos.com. Keleher's like Kelleher, but with one L. So John, King, Edward, Lincoln, Edward, Henry, Edward, Robert, at rapidsos.com. If you can reach out to me, I can direct you if you're in another state or region that I don't cover. I cover 8 states, mostly in the Midwest, and then 3 in the Northeast, but I can direct you to the right person. Or you can email EEM, which stands for ECC Engagement Manager, Edward Mary at rapidsos.com, EEM. And we can direct you to the person that's over your area that can help you sign up or whatever. There's no cost to Rapid SOS portal. It's an amazing tool to have in conjunction with all of your other tools that you use in the dispatch center.
Let me re-highlight, no cost, everybody. So reach out, get this awesome technology in your centers. Julie, thank you so much for everything you've done, everything you're doing at Rapid SOS. I always enjoy learning about the tech that's out there in our 911 dispatcher hemisphere. So again, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
All right, everybody. That was another amazing episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Julie, again, thank you so much for being willing to come on, talk about Rapid SOS, talk about your journey and all the awesome technology that is available for free. I'm going to repeat that, for free. I know budgets can be a struggle. So whenever we can implement technology into our centers at a low or no cost, we should look into doing that. So definitely check out the information section of this episode for Julie's contact. If that's something that your center is looking to introduce, definitely do so. As always, thank you all for listening. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, and stay raspy. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch, a Raspy Dispatcher production. If you like the podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and of course, tell a friend. If you want to be a guest, head to the raspydispatcher.com and check out our additional resources. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody.